Hello. This should be about legal realism. The reason for it is that to start with this, is because legal realism is sort of an initial starting point of socio-legal theory. It's really pre-sociological in certain respects. It's also common sense. It's the normal way I think the law is thought about. It's seen as an object out there. You know, people talk about, well, the law should do this or the law should do that, and there's this sort of anthropomorphizing of the law, where it is a person that can act in the world. The law is unfair. This sort of thing. So it's an idea of seeing what for us later will be a social construction as an object, really not exactly separate from people, but at least something that you can talk about as separate from people. So let me see if I can make a little bit of sense of that. If you listen to the theory lectures, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to start from rational choice. If you haven't, I'll do a little quick thing here. Going back as far as I want to go back, people were thought of as vessels, not so much individuals. And so there was an idea that what a person did really depended upon whether God or the devil was at work in their bodies. So that if you did good things, it was seen as, you were blessed. And if you were doing evil things, there was an idea, especially if they were really evil things, that there was a devil inside you or something of that sort that sometimes had to be gotten out. And usually fire, I think, was involved. But in any case, the idea of an individual with will and responsibility and all of those sorts of things, at least in the feudal era in Europe, wasn't the way that people normally thought about things. And there's all kinds of concepts like this. I mean, we have notions of childhood that we think are universal and have been here forever, and they have not. We have ideas about love as though it's a universal thing through all cultures and all time, and it's not. These things all come up at a specific historical, not moment, but era, time. And so at this time, you don't get that. Now, one of the things that comes with the rise of Protestantism in Northern Europe is a notion that you don't need a higher authority to understand God, because each of us has been touched by God with a rational mind. That rational mind can read the Bible or see the natural world and understand the face of God, understand God's plan, without reference to an authority like a Catholic church structure or something like that. As you get that notion of a rational mind, you still have to explain people's actions. And what you end up having to explain is, why some people make good decisions and some people make worse decisions. And the idea with rational choice theory, it was sort of that, although we're all blessed by God, some of us are more blessed and some of us are less blessed. You could tell who was rational really by the material things they had. People that make rational decisions minimize the cost of every action that they take, maximize the benefit, and they end up with more benefits. Now, you may want to see these things as, less pain and more pleasure or whatever, but usually it's thought of in material terms. And then what you needed for a good society was for those who were rational, those who made good decisions, to be in control of those that made bad decisions, costly decisions. If you let the bad people control, if you let their decisions rule, then eventually the country would get controlled by a more rational country. Now, this worked in the family, as I've said in the other lectures. The man is supposed to, in these ideas, would be the head of the family because he was more rational. For some of the religious people, men were the ones that went to heaven. Women got to heaven by being connected to a rational man. And then there were more rational races and less rational races, and more rational countries and less rational countries. In all of this, the job of the law was to regulate things so that those that were more rational could control those that were less rational, and you wouldn't need necessarily to deal with your individual ability to pull a gun on somebody else or use your brute strength against somebody else. The law was there to sort of mirror this rationality. Within this, there's an idea, and this may come up also in your social problems class, that people who were not rational act as a disease in a society. This was long ago referred to as social pathology, where the idea is that some countries have a greater amount of disease in them. They have people that are just not rational. These people are not rational because of how they were blessed by God or not blessed by God. So nothing you do is going to change them. You can't educate them because they are not educatable. You cannot save them. And I mean that in a religious sense. You can't, how we're at a point now where you can actually be like born again and saved in Christ or something. No, they didn't have that at all. If you're not rational at birth, there are no social programs to make you rational, no reasonable, socializable, there's nothing of that. You're just basically a disease. And the question is, how will you be managed so that you don't infect the rest of society? Now, some of the ideas about eugenics, about biology and passing criminal, not genes, but they would have said traits, along from one generation to the next, was part of this social theory. Now, in sociological circles, nobody would pay attention to this. It has massive problems. It doesn't work well. You get to a certain point where after you get different groups coming in, some people think that 90% of the country is diseased or something like that, and it's at a certain point just not helpful. And by the way, what do? I mean, what you have done is you've said these people are bad and will always be bad. You either isolate them or kill them. There aren't a lot of sociological solutions available to you at that point, or I guess you could send them back to wherever it is they came from, because it turns out they're almost never natives. All right, so this is an idea of social pathology. Now, even though it's a couple hundred years old now, if you go back through the discussions in this class, you will find a line here or there that makes you, that at least you could connect to this theory. There are aspects of it that are still in use. I think in Reich's book, you might even be able to see it a couple of places, not in her own writings, but as she quotes others, where people just think, this group is diseased, they are bad, there is nothing that can be done, they are biologically bad, or at least for whatever reasons beyond salvaging, and they should go away. Let me give you another one that's a little farther down the line and now becoming a little bit more sociological. And that theory is social disorganization theory. And again, I'm going to tell you a few details about these things, but honestly, at most, I would ever want you to do is to be able to recognize when somebody's talk or actions are going along with the theories. I'm not really interested in the definition so much. So anyway, so with social disorganization theory, you have writers such as Cooley talking about the difference between primary and secondary group relations. So here's the situation. Most of this comes up after World War I. You have a lot of industrialization. You have a lot of social changes, especially in Europe, after World War I. Really people who were frightened by the destructive capabilities that they were seeing. And they were trying to figure out what the hell was going on. So one of the things that sociologists were able to do is say, here's what's going on, here's why it's going on. So social disorganization and Cooley. He said one of the things that happens is as people go from country to country, their primary group relations with family members, personal contacts, completely change. And at that point, they don't know what to do or what to expect from their environments. You can, at that point, not expect them to follow the rules that keep everything in line in a society. That's one aspect of social disorganization. Thomas and Zanecki, or I can never say his name, the book is called The Polish Peasant, a classic sociological book. They talk about it slightly differently, including something where there's too many rules, which is you can actually go into a new situation, have your old rules, new rules, and hear a bunch of different sets of new rules at the same time. It's sort of like handling different professors in college at first, because they have so many different ways of doing things. It's hard to figure out, okay, what's going on, what's expected of me this time, including I'm sure this class. When you give them too many rules, the rules will begin to conflict with one another. The role in one country that you have and the role in another country that you have are completely different. But it doesn't even have to go that far. As you go to college, if you have friends that aren't going to college, then when you come back to them after a while, their ways of doing things, what's relevant in their life, what they care about, what they talk about, can be somewhat different than what you talk about. And it's hard sometimes to go back to friends that are taking a different path that you're taking. This disorganization leads to people doing things that are not right, that are against society, that break the rules. In other words, these are why crimes and rule breakages happen, according to social theory. A little bit more. A guy named Ogburn talks about something called cultural lag, where the idea is that a rule may change in one spot, but it takes forever for it to get everywhere. And so different parts of something as large as the United States are going to be culturally different because the rules haven't pervaded everywhere. Under social disorganization, the anti-law activity happens because of massive social change, which in turn means that there is no guiding set of rules for different reasons for different people. Here now, you can fix the situation through greater efforts at socialization, at education, by making sure the rules are coherent and that there's only one set of them, by trying to minimize conflicts. Sociologists, in effect, give themselves work to do because there's a way to take this stuff out. Okay, I think that's enough for one go.